First up, we have Anthony Abraham Jack, assistant professor at Harvard Graduate School of Education, and a really great story that I'm excited to be bringing to our viewers. Anthony, good evening.
Good evening, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. We had you on the damage report before, but I wanted to get you on this show too, so everyone gets an option to hear about this. Now, you wrote a piece in the New York Times Magazine called "I was a low-income college student, classes weren't the hard part," saying schools must learn that when you come from poverty, you need more than financial aid to succeed. And I know a lot of this is based on your own personal experience. So can you kind of give our viewers a little bit of why you wrote this and what you experienced?
You know, it is my own personal story. I am a first-generation college student, the son of a middle school security guard, the brother of a janitor. And a lot of people think that when you get a full ride or a good scholarship, that's all you need. And that's kind of also what colleges think, but they have to realize that access is not inclusion. When you open the gates with just money, you ignore all the other struggles that students have. And on college campus, there is a hidden curriculum, a system of unwritten rules and unset expectations that only those whose family have been to college or who have been on college campuses themselves know about. Like for example, office hours. You know, most people have never heard the term office hours, yet when you get to college, people expect you to be able to go to a professor's office, sit there one-on-one to ask questions or to just talk to them about general material. And that's the way you get those letters of recommendation. Those are the ways in which you get asked to be their research assistant and things like that. And if you're not comfortable doing that, or if you don't know that you should, you lose out on a lot of opportunities. And colleges did not take the next step to think about what they need to do to not just admit lower income and first-generation college students, but support them while they're there, because they assume that we have the same kind of cultural knowledge as the upper middle class who have went to certain schools, have certain parents that have certain jobs that can teach us how to navigate these places.
A good point that you bring that up, because sometimes, often going to a professor's office during office hours and just showing your face and this willingness to learn can be the difference between passing or failing a course.
Yeah.
And how do you know that? Right, if you've never been around anyone who experienced that.
I mean, just think about it. How many schools in America actually set aside time, high schools in America, right? Set aside time where teachers are mandated to be there to ask just questions for any kind of questions that students have after the school bell rings, right? It's mostly the private schools or some of the smaller publics that are typically in more wealthy areas that can have the resources to have people dedicate that much time with students in that kind of way, right? Office hours are a term that for some lower income students, when they heard it for the first time, as one dean told me, they thought it was actually a time when professors did their own work, when they should not be bothered. The exact opposite of what what professors and what university officials think of them as, right? So there's something that's lost in communication with lower income and first-generation college students navigating this hidden curriculum. And that's one thing I talk about in that article and also the book more generally, because if you are a lower income first-generation college student and you go into this environment, you need different sorts of support. But the problem is the students who need the kind of support that are housed within the writing center, the math center, mental health counseling, the students who need the help the most are the least likely to go and get it because they don't know that it's there. They don't know that they have access to it. And so how do we begin to change the culture around what help seeking is and making sure that students actually know they can and that they are entitled to those resources?
So I want to touch on something else that you brought up in the article, food. Eating on campus, especially when you rely on kind of campus provided services to get your meals, but the campus is completely shut down, whether it be a holiday, something like that. Explain a little bit of what goes on for what you call, I think, the privileged poor. That's the term you use, right?
So many people, when you think of college students, many people don't realize just how rampant the problem of food insecurity is. Food insecurity is a national problem. Not knowing where your next food is coming from, next meal is coming from in college, roughly estimates show that 2 out of 5 undergraduates in America are food insecure, right? And then when people think about that, that's eye-opening, but it doesn't matter what school you go to. Because I study elite schools. I study the Harvards, the Yales, the Princetons, the Amherst, the Williams. And even on those campuses, food insecurity is a problem. So I've had students tell me everything from they tried to live off of one meal a week, one meal a day. Students going to the dollar store to live off anything they can microwave. One student actually went lined up dates using OkCupid for the week before spring break to line up dates the following week. Banking on gender norms of older men paying for the first meal, she treated OkCupid as if it was DoorDash. Like she made do. Like drastic times called for drastic measures. I'm not saying that response or that action is universal. What I'm saying is students are inventive and creative when they need to make ends meet. The question is, why are universities putting students in that kind of position when they could actually do something about it? Why should students waste their energies trying to scavenge a city for food or doing other things like rationing out food and living off increasingly stale food that they are able to have in their dining hall? Because at the school that I studied, the elite school that I studied, 1 out of every 7 students were food insecure during holidays and recesses, which the school shut down, assuming that all students leave for fun in the sun.
Which, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And plane tickets are expensive, and if your family doesn't live close. And there was something else you've touched on, kind of like this idea that if you grow up poor, being food insecure, that's nothing new. But you learn how to adapt at home. You know what deals are at the local restaurant. Like where who gives almost expired food for super cheap. You know how to figure it out. But that's different, and it's a whole new experience when you're in kind of like a shut down college ghost town.
Yeah, for us, when I was growing up, that's when McDonald's had the 29-cent hamburgers and 39-cent cheeseburgers on Wednesdays and Sundays. And when that Wednesday before payday was always tough. And so we would go to the store, we would go to McDonald's and say, give us 15 hamburgers or 15 cheeseburgers, because we were able to afford that and we would make ends meet. But if you don't have a car, or if you don't have access to to some of those easier finds that you can get a real sale, you're stuck. But this is not just a problem that lower income students face. Like, what about students who know that home and harm are synonymous? Right, that's something that's very important. We have a number of students who are in the foster care system, which means they don't really have a home to go back to.
That's true.
And what about those students who have very fraught relationships with their family, especially those students who are queer, questioning, or transitioning? To go back home sometimes can be as much psychological pain as anything else. And so the question is, what can the university do to make itself not only accessible, but inclusive for the new crop of students that we are admitting?
So do you think university leaders know this problem exists? As you're explaining it, it seems obvious, but do you think they know?
They know now.
Okay.
I think, and I'm, in the same way, I'm on this, I feel like a national campaign to talk about not only why we should define office hours, but also why we should think about food insecurity on a college campus. The problem is those who control the purse strings of the university are oftentimes those with the least amount of contact with students. Those who set the calendar, who set the policies for when the dining halls open, who negotiate the contracts for food services, are those who are not in contact with students. So they actually don't know who stays on campus and who doesn't. Now, I'm not trying to say that that's an out for a university. I think they should be held accountable for supporting their students. But I'm trying to bring two groups of people in a conversation with each other that previously didn't even cross paths really, because if you work in an administrative building, you're probably not walking by classes or dorms. Like, you're in a very different part of the university. So now we are able to have a conversation around, and not just food insecurity, right? Because the conversation gets expanded to housing insecurity. And these are among undergraduates who are at the university. But when you think about the meal plans and different things like that, there are significant gaps.
So what can be done, like right now at this point, what can start being done to address this issue? What systems can be put in place?
To me, data is our most powerful ally. We actually need to know who not just who our students are food insecure, but also making sure when. Because knowing just how many of our students will get us only halfway there, we need to understand if food insecurity is episodic, meaning that it's happening just about every day. Episodic, is it happening around breaks? Or is it chronic, happening just about every day? Because that requires two different responses. If it's chronic, it helps when you have a food pantry, a food bank relationship with food banks and other resources. But if it's episodic, meaning it only happens over breaks, that means we need to change our dining hall policies. And so understanding both the nature and the prevalence of these issues is incredibly important. And we need to understand what is the undergraduate experience at our universities so that we can have tailored and very, very real responses to a very real problem.
Anthony Abraham Jack, your book is titled The Privileged Poor. You can get it on sale right now. Thank you so much for being here with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me again.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.